Yep.
Welcome to the Struggle Bubble. I'm your co-host, Chad Cutting.
And I am your other co-host, Craig Sergi. How are we?
That's awesome. Nice. Welcome, Coach.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I thought I would wear the appropriate hat today for the guest we are speaking to.
That's right. Later on today, we have Stanford pitching coach Thomas Eager, which we're super excited about. One of the earliest supporters of the Struggle Bubble, when we did our first video, messaged us immediately, congratulated us for getting it off the ground. And we both threw it out there, knowing full well that you and I don't know what the hell we're doing. It's a constant struggle just to get our equipment set up every time that we do this. But he's been super supportive, and it's a great sit-down conversation with him that I think we went well beyond the 25-minute target that we had.
For sure. And this is, Thomas is the nicest guy. Just his job is one thing and his professional life is one thing, which anyone who likes baseball, Stanford, Cal Poly, etc. will be super interested in. His journey to get into pros and then coaching. But I think for me, the biggest thing is just damn right great guy, family guy, committed to the community we live in. And that is all captured in this interview. I think it's we even get into the money side of baseball now at college. So that's super interesting to me because it's a new world.
And just on that point of being a nice guy, there's a debate that we've had amongst our friend group of, do you need to be an asshole to be successful? Or does being a successful person make you an asshole? And Thomas is the exception to the rule here, where he is able to operate at such a high level at a very high pressure situation at Stanford, has seen success, but is so down to earth and willing to help. We've had him out at the Little League talking to all of our coaches. Early when I got started, asked, do you have any coaching plans? Can you help us out? And just not a problem at all. He would dig right in, give the shirt off the back. And I think the conversation really brought out, and we got to learn a lot about him that we didn't know already. The childhood, the key tenets and principles in his life that got him to where he is. And really, I think a lot for our listeners that have youngsters growing up, baseball, soccer, whatever sport it is, to really see somebody that's made a name for themselves and done it the right way.
Totally. Again, right, we talk about parental pressure cooker. We get into that into the episode about, again, what are we doing with these 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-olds? It really does anything we coach now transition into that pro world or college world and what we're looking at as coaches. And then I think you nailed it. It's like good coaches will help and be transparent their whole life, irrelevant of where they're coaching, who they're coaching is. You're constantly learning. Also, you've generally always got someone to lean on, right? Someone to, ricochet bullets, but also, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then again, the transparency, the Q&A with your players, what's in their head, how's their emotions, etc. And then finally, I think the big thing for me was everyone's always got to have a mentor, just somebody to help be a bit of a North Star guiding light in, especially the coaching world, right? It's tough. You're on that pedestal all the time if something goes wrong, and really good coaches take it and they don't let it affect their players. They take the hit, which is really cool. I just think it's a really good interview.
That hits on the theme that we want to talk a little bit about in this intro, is that there's a pressure to be perfect on the coaches, on the players, from the parents, from the coaches. It just seems to be bouncing in all sorts of different directions, that when you step onto the pitch, you step into the batter's box, you step onto the court, that you think you're going to be perfect. And then you're operating in a very tight and robotic fashion where you're really not fluid. You've talked about the flow state many times of just being in the zone. And you're not thinking, you're reacting, you've practiced, you put in all the work. Now it's time to just play.
Yeah.
And there's the example that I've seen lately is somebody or a player will be on the field and make a mistake. And their immediate thing is to go and look at mom or dad in the stands. Like immediately, the error is made, they process that they screwed up, and they let somebody down. And that pressure to be perfect at all times, especially in a game of baseball. I don't know how stats are viewed or shots on goal are viewed in the soccer world, but you're going to fail 7 out of 10 times. if you're elite in the major league level, you're going to fail, and we've lost the ability to accept, it's not failure, to accept that imperfection, especially as parents.
Well, I think there's multiple things you can go down on this one, especially in this interview as well. But one is social media, right? I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but um, you win, you lose, whatever. At the level that Thomas is coaching, those players' social media will be absolutely bombarded with comments, right? Trolls, etc. And then again, kids get addicted to how many people have viewed this, how many people haven't viewed it, all those kind of things are in there. But, do you talk about the stats side of it? Baseball is very stat orientated. And if you even look at soccer, right? If you look at someone like Messi, you look at his running chart, dude doesn't run at all. I mean, he runs, but nowhere near the level that people grade at 7 miles a game and all this kind of stuff. But that's not his style, obviously, right? So it's, how deep can you get down there? I watched a thing this morning about, some of the England players, and the biggest thing between 7 and 10 is ball manipulation, individual ability. Because again, you talk about it, the flow state, I talk about it all the time, is when you're in that state, you've already done the 10,000 hours. It's easy. And you'll hear this again, anyone listens to this opening section, any kids that play baseball, you hear Thomas repeat the same thing, and myself, of saying, hey, we know they can hit the ball, we know they can catch, we know they can throw, we're looking at all the other things. And Thomas gives a great example of when he pulled a kid and how he sat with that kid and explained the scenario. And that's, again, coaching. I appreciate the hat. That's coaching. Right? Coaching isn't the screaming, the shouting. The result is going to be the result. The end is going to be the end. There's only so much we can do. I've talked about this multiple times. I can't be on the field. I can't take the shot. I can't make the pass, etc. But I can influence the players sitting next to me if there's something happened emotionally, intelligently, and get them back out there to be successful. And I think at that section of the interview that Thomas gives, it's something that everybody coaching Little League absolutely should listen to, because it's so key in, you're a coach. So coach, you're not a cheerleader worrying about the end result. So remember which box you sit in.
And that's the biggest thing is on the Little League side, we're in between seasons. We've wrapped up our regular season. All our youngest divisions have played. We still have one more team playing. Our juniors team advanced to the championship in the Section 5 tournament. It's our only team that's advanced this far. Everybody else's season is over. So it's a time for us to reflect as an organization of what went well, what could be done better, and how do we improve going into the next season. And I would say this is one of the biggest topics that we're going to speak about as a board of why are we here? What is our end goal? And it's that retention, that love of the game. You have over 500 people or 500 players in our organization. How do we get 500 back and then continue to grow in the right way? For the love of the game, I'm excited to be part of this community. I'm excited to grow. And a lot of that comes down to the coach. How did I feel when I was at practice? How did I feel at the game? How did I feel at the end of the season? There can be only one champion per division. That's 12 kids out of 100 in each little division. That doesn't make the other 90% failures. Every one of them can be just as excited coming back and playing baseball. And we need to find more tools to equip those coaches to focus less about wins and losses and more about where the team started and where they ended mentally and on the field.
Well, you talk about retention, right? And Thomas gets into this. If he'd have left, if the portal was open when he played, would he have stayed or left Cal Poly? Because as he says in the interview, he wasn't a starting pitcher in year 1 or 2. It only came around in the latter years of his collegiate career that got him to the pros. Now with a portal, that gives these collegiate athletes a chance to move every year. They can just throw their name in. And we deal with this all the way down. I think it's a super negative thing that college has done personally. I mean, there's positives, but also some negatives in there. And Thomas gets into that. But if my team's not winning, I'm just going to drive 30 minutes down the road and go to a winning team.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's you're seeing that all the time in competitive soccer right now, right? We have conversations on a weekly basis of, And it
Yeah.
comes down to coaching,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
If you're getting the right level
Expectations and
of
coaching.
exactly, you're getting the right level of coaching, that what you believe that is going to make your son or daughter better. And again, we're not talking about collegiate better. You're not making an 8, 9, 10-year-old a college athlete, but there are risks by not having a coach that's in it for the right reasons and able to develop those kids in losing a year. If you're not properly developing and meeting standards, and it's a balancing act of making sure that an organization level, we're doing the right thing so we have the right coaches with the right mentality, communicating in the right way, and can continue that year on year so that the players are developing at the right clip, because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You can go to a different club and have the same experience, and really it comes down to finding that coaching
Well,
mentality.
and you make a valid point there of, are parents asking the right question about development? Show me the session plans, or what's your development theories, periodization. What are you doing? And they're the questions we should be asking, right? Not what's your win-loss rate. Well, who cares, honestly? They're 7 and 8, right? And you hear me say it all the time. Nobody won the World Cup at 10 years old. So we're progressing the kids to get to that level. But it's the same in baseball, right? To your point, is it the right coach? Are we teaching the right things? At the end of the day, it's going to pan out how it pans out on the field. Simple as that. So I think, again, it goes into a deeper section in the interview about all of those different variations of how we get to where we get to, honestly. And again, I just repeat myself, that flow state. If you're out practicing every single night with nobody around, your likelihood of success on the field increases twofold, because you've already repeated the things that you need to do multiple times. So it goes back to, and that's part of coaching as well, right? As you know, and everyone told me to say this, I got a text the other day. One of my players is now up to 33 juggles. She's 8 years old. She started comp with me 1 year ago. I just saw a video of her. She hit a penalty in the top right corner. I'm like, what do you want to work on this summer? Well, I want to get stronger kicks, etc. I'm like, okay, work on your juggling, right? Because you get over 20, then you've actually got rhythm. So then we can get to 50, 60. The numbers can go as far as they want. There's actually consistency and rhythm in the striking of the ball. Builds up leg strength, because now she's on one leg all the time, consistently moving between left and right. See a photo of us hitting that elevated upper right PK, and I'm like, damn. Just through summer training, just out. And again, we talk about it all the time. Play. It doesn't have to be It doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be in a coaching environment. It doesn't have to be with a team. Just play. Just learn and play the game.
And that's going to translate, that player wants it. And you can't teach wanting it. In fact, we're with this, focus on perfection, we're going the opposite way. We're going so down as a parent, go get your juggles in, go get your pitches in, go get your ground balls in, go get your, X, Y, and Z in. Then they don't want to do it. They're doing it for the outcome, not for the process. So that entire example is exactly what we need more of I'm setting a goal for myself. It's something that is tangible. It's measurable. I'm at 3 juggles. I want to get to 10. Or we're talking about, past episode with Theo with pull-ups. Started off with 1, now he's up to 6. And he's so proud of himself because he set that. He wanted to do that. He wanted to get better. And that feeds more desire. And that's all the right reasons, versus forcing kids to focus on something they just might not be passionate about, or we're driving the passion away with how strict we are with the regimen.
Yeah. Again, just so many areas around that. And as they get into that collegiate, Thomas clicks onto it about the money and the social media following and how they can and that's for me where it goes sideways really quickly. That if we need to worry about what we look like on camera to generate income to go and play at a certain school, then that's, we're going down a very dark hole.
Well, just a little bit related, but you have these experts, and it's everywhere from health experts to youth sports experts to business professionals that are giving advice, giving snippets on social media. And some of them are just about churning out more and more content, and the instructions are crazy, where you're jumping through hoops to hit a baseball. And you worry about, as kids are consuming more of that bite-sized content, and less of the long form, coaching, watching full games and watching players progress and, idolizing somebody out on the field. They're just getting little snippets of how-tos, that we're able to piece it all together with an actual drive and desire for something bigger than just a quick hit, viral sensation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that baseball does really well, right? Is that you can watch the repeats. You guys were talking about it at the start. Is you can watch the repeats at nighttime, right, and just see these top level players, and that's the stuff we need to be showing, those snippets, and not the trick shots, not the craziness, but just the actual game again. Just learn the game. Just it's the biggest thing I think people miss. And we've had it in soccer for years and years, people doing trick shots and juggles and all these kind of things, but they're really not that great on field, but they're magicians off the field, kind of the circus act, as I call it. So yeah, it's a great interview.
What we're going to do now is pause and get you all squared away for an interview with Thomas Eager, Stanford pitching coach. But before then, I want everybody to take a look at the device that they're listening on, hit the subscribe button, navigate over to Instagram, and find the Struggle Bubble Pod. We're posting little snippets of our interviews as well as a whole bunch of content just to get you up to speed on what we're really trying to build out with the Struggle Bubble. With that, stay tuned for an interview with Thomas Eager. Really excited about our next guest on the show today. Want to welcome Thomas Eager. Thomas is currently the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator for Stanford Cardinal Baseball. And he's been instrumental to the success that you've seen. I don't know if you've been following along with Stanford baseball, but multiple Pac-12 titles, multiple College World Series appearances. And before he was a coach at Stanford, a standout ball player down at Cal Poly. Earned first team all Big West Conference honors and spent 4 years in the St. Louis Cardinals organization before transitioning into coaching at his alma mater at Cal Poly. But it's not just about college with Thomas. He's also a father to 3 young boys and actively coaching Little League. Got to see him on the diamond a few weeks ago with Union Little League, and believe he has a unique perspective on everything that it takes to go down to the Sandlot, where the boys are playing Little League, travel baseball, all the way up into making that big jump into college and professional baseball. Really excited to have you on the show today, Thomas. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Craig. Yeah, this is quite an opportunity for me, and been following what you guys have been doing. And like I said, we've been friends for some time, and I'm excited you guys asked me to be on here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Actually, when we first launched Struggle Bubble, we had made a social media post and saw Thomas Eager comments, and really kind of threw out the idea then of we appreciate the support of you following us, but also to have you on to really lend credence to what we're trying to get across to our viewers, our listeners, on what it takes to be a well-rounded individual, not just a coach, but a dad, a husband, an employee. And I think you embody a lot of what we're trying to show and what it takes to be successful in today's sports, in today's game.
I appreciate that.
Get our listeners caught up to your evolution. Maybe start at the college level at Cal Poly and walk us through how you got to the role today.
I went to Cal Poly out of high school. It was a weird recruiting deal. I didn't really pitch too much in high school. I was more outfield, third base, catcher. Pitched a little bit, but got recruited to go there as a pitcher and decided to go. I redshirted my first year, so I didn't play. I was just on the team. My redshirt freshman year, I pitched about, I think, 16 to 20 innings, so it wasn't a really big role. And then going into my junior year, I kind of made this transformation of some things kind of went on, in summer baseball, and just kind of put a whole new perspective, and ended up, throwing like 126 innings, and got drafted and went on to play pro ball for 4 years. Right before my 5th year, I tore my UCL, and it was kind of one of those moments in life where I'm like, okay, where do I go? And there's been a few moments in my life where I'm like, hey, do I keep playing, or being a big leaguer, does that define who I am? And I got to that point when I got injured, was like, I didn't care if I was a big leaguer or not. And I went down to Cal Poly to finish my degree, and my coach there was like, hey, why don't you write it down and start coaching? So I was like, why not? Did it, and then got my degree. And then sure enough, the pitching coach left the same time. I mean, it was just kind of perfect storm. He left to Washington, he hired me, and then I was a pitching coach at 26, 27, and there for 3 years, and then Cal for 2, and now I'm going on my 8th year at Stanford. So kind of a quick kind of journey, but um, I would say a lot of it is right place, right time. And I think there's a couple big moments in my life where I made some decisions that kind of really changed who I was and my perspective, and allowed me to make the decisions I made to get where I am. Where I think early on in life, like, just being young and, I guess a male where you got to be this figure. I mean, I was able to make some decisions to go the other way and not worry about what other people thought. And it kind of led me to where I am now, which I'm grateful. I'm very grateful that the fact that I'm coaching at Stanford was amazing. I remember when my wife's from this area and I met her in college. I remember I got into coaching. Her mother, my mother-in-law, kept saying, she's like, Thomas, it'd be great when you get to coach at Stanford. I'm like, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's like a cult. Like they only hire within their own. Like I'm this Cal Poly guy. And then I went to Cal and I moved closer up north. And it was, hey, this is about as close as we're going to get family wise. And then sure enough, I'm here and I'm very blessed and grateful to be in the spot I'm in.
And that's the comfort level to be at your alma mater. You know how the program runs. You went through it for 3 years, 4 years, and then move on. When did you start having aspirations for anything other than Cal Poly? Actually, we know many Cal Poly families. Shout out Dr. Susie. It's you said a cult for Stanford, right? There's a strong following positioning on the Cal Poly side. What was the strong pull that said, hey, that I'm going to move on from Cal Poly?
Yeah, it was tough. I'll be honest with you. I was willing to be at Cal Poly for the rest of my life. I think, my wife went down there. We both went to school there. Right. And, my firstborn, Trey, he was born there. We just bought a house. We were dead set on it. And I think what happened was, I know what happened. San Diego State tried to offer me a pitching coach position. That was pretty much double the salary I was making at Cal Poly. And I didn't want to leave. The money part, you don't get into coaching to be rich. You get in because of people you're around and, what you can do impact in people's lives and the relationships, most of the relationships. And my head coach at the time, who's still there, Larry, he goes, hey, go interview for that. Try and get it so I can get you a raise. Right. And so rightfully so, I went down and then they couldn't get me a raise. And I was like, whatever, I'm staying. And then Cal literally called a week later and pretty much offered a little bit more than what San Diego State offered. And I had to take it. It was one of those things where even my head coach, Larry, he came up to me and goes, like, you got to take this job. Like it's in the Pac-12. It's closer to home. It's double your salary. You saw that Cal Poly is not going to do anything for you. If you want to kind of take this as your career, I think you need to take this opportunity with your young family and see what will happen. And so that was kind of the driving force. I didn't really want to leave. And then at Cal, I happened to be there 2 years. The head coach got offered the job at Stanford and they brought me with them. So, I mean, I've lucked out, but I've never been one to look for other jobs or to really put my name in there. It's like, hey, I've always gone after like, hey, if you do a good job, you're going to come after me. I'm not trying to put myself out there.
And I think, you could say lucked out and all that. And sure, there's timing that plays into it, a little bit of luck. But what I'm hearing is you had an advisor that was bought into you. So you must have been doing something right to say, all right, I want Thomas to be successful and I'm not going to be selfish. He needs to expand his horizons. And then you had a support group around you that, believed in you and said, all right, if you want to make this move, we're going to make this with you. And then where Esker is, from Cal to Stanford, you're doing something right to say, I'm bringing this guy with me. He's my guy and not, I'm sure Stanford can recruit any pitching coach, any hitting coach that they would want. But talk a little bit about the work ethic that you had that, got you to where you are.
Yeah. A couple things I've learned throughout the way. I remember when I first got into coaching, my first year, I remember Jason Kelly, who's now he was head coach at Washington. He just took the assistant pitching job at A&M. But he was also my pitching coach my last year at Cal Poly. When I replaced him, I said, hey, what do you got for me? Give me something. And he said, wear as many hats as possible. He goes, make yourself so useful that they can't get rid of you, right? That if they do, it's a huge loss. And so that was something at that time at 26, 27, I was like, I'm in, like, I'm going to go. I had the energy to do it. Let's go. Give me every responsibility. And that's what I did. And then I took that same mantra into Cal. And, Coach Esther was a little bit more open to giving me more opportunity. And, in terms of recruiting and offering, budgeting, all those kind of things. And I just kind of ran with it. And the same thing, kind of, I think that's why he took me to Stanford too. And now at Stanford, I mean, I do all the missions, all the recruiting and offers and getting the guys into school. And I think if you have a well-oiled, company machine, everybody's kind of doing their part at a high level where nobody has to worry about it. And, Coach Esker always tells me, he goes, "Hey, I'm going to give you the keys to the car. You drive it however the hell you want. And I'll tell you if I don't like it, but I need you to drive it the way you think you need to drive it." And I was like, and so that's just kind of all how I went about it. And I've also kind of always thought about this part is that long ago, someone told me this, that your future or whatever your life goes on, it's your fault, right? And the aspect was, it goes both ways. So if you're not getting what you want, if you aren't getting what you want in life, you're not where you want in life, technically it's your fault. If you are doing everything when you are happy where you're at and you are, you feel, that everything you're getting is because you're working hard and stuff, guess what? It's your fault, right? And so I've always kind of gone off of that as my kind of work ethic part. It goes both ways. And you're going to, use that with my pitchers and our baseball players as well. It's like, hey, understand it. It's your fault. And it's not a bad thing always. It's also a good thing. You just got to learn how to work with it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this you go back to, and probably if we go back to your playing days, everything you're talking about is mentorship, right? Somebody's gave you advice, mentored you, walked you through the process. And, there's a lot of coaches that we deal with where, to your point, that's some of the best advice I ever got was wear as many hats, do as many jobs, do as many coaching opportunities, anything you can to get to wherever your goal needs to be. But if we roll it back to when you were playing, that seems to be like something that was already in you, right? You've probably when you were playing as well, I don't know obviously when you were out there playing, but it sounds like you were the first to training, last to training, carry the balls, carry the bat, do whatever's needed for the coach, the team, etc. And as you said, for your college recruiting, you didn't go in like a big swinger. You just went in as, okay, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to, same as Chad and I, right? Is where I'm getting to is I took the opportunity to come to California. Chad took the opportunity to go from Ohio to California. You took the opportunity that's laid there in front of you. And to your exact point, right? It's like, hey, it's your fault, good and bad, right? So you either jump in with 2 feet, either way, it's going to figure itself out. So just kind of roll back a little bit. Go back to your playing days. What do you think came from that got you to where you are today?
So I'll go back even farther. So my parents got divorced when I was two and a half years old, and it amicable, right? It wasn't one thing or the other. It was in both loving parents, and split time both ways. And then eventually they lived far apart. So my dad actually in a weird way somehow won custody for the school year. Nothing against my mom. It was just court and psychologist and whatever. But something that I had to learn at an early age that is probably around middle school. My dad sat me down and he said, "Hey, you're not the reason why your mom and I got divorced. That was our deal. It's not your fault. It's never going to be your fault. So he goes, you need to be extremely selfish." And I was like, you're telling like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid this, right? Like, be selfish. He's like, "Hey, Tom, if you want to go spend Christmas with your mom, even though it's supposed to be with me, tell me you're going to your mom's, right? If you want to go spend your birthday with me and not your mom's, then tell your mom, right? Like, you have to learn to be selfish because it's not your fault that you and got divorced." And so I think that got instilled in me in an early age, which was a good thing. I would say my wife would say I need therapy now because of that, right? And I think I've gotten a hell of a lot better because I think early on I was really selfish, but I think you have to be if you want to get where you want to get to, especially at a young age. And I think that driving force of like, hey, do what you want because you want to do it. And then my dad's always been like, hey, if you're going to do something, you go all the way, right? And he always had these like little mantras like walk softly, carry a big stick, and act like you've been there before. And these are these little things that my dad instilled in me at a young age. And, you respect everybody if you're no one, right? And so these are the little things that I kind of grew up with. And so I think leading to what you're saying is like, I never felt like a failure. I always felt like if I just kept working and kept showing up, I was going to get to where I wanted to get to. And I think that's kind of what, you implied with both Chad and your story too, Craig. It's just that hard work. I don't think anybody's better than me. And even if you are okay, then I'm going to find a way to get better. And I thought the biggest thing, I just kept showing up, and I had this instilled confidence of probably being selfish at an early age that kind of rode with me all the way through, college and pro ball. But, to go back to those two defining moments, I tell you, is in college. I remember coming back from playing summer ball, going into my junior year, and they asked me where I wanted to go summer ball again next year. And I said, don't. I'm going to give me an internship. I was a business major at Cal Poly. And I said, give me an internship. I need to start thinking about the next part of my life. And it just so happened. It didn't mean that I changed the way I worked. My work ethic, I still got up early, still lifted, do all that stuff. But all of a sudden, my brain wasn't so focused on baseball. I was like, what's the else? And then sure enough, I had the best year of my life,
Yeah.
pitching wise, right? It's funny how things work. And then two, in pro ball, I started playing my best when, one, I didn't care if I got released, and two, I didn't care if I make it to the big leagues. All of a sudden, I was playing the best baseball of my life. And it's funny how those two moments I always remember, and I share that with my players. And it wasn't like I didn't care anymore. It wasn't like I didn't want to be the best. It just, I was able to separate and understand like I can live my life, and it didn't define who I was off the field. And it helped me get to where I am.
There's so much of that. I call it flow state. You're captured into what you're doing, but you've got something else to distract the brain that the flow state kicks in, and everything you've concentrated on and as we know, right, the 10,000 hours, etc., but everything you've done from a 7-8-year-old, it just all hits at once, and you're in that state, and you're untouchable at that point. Just because the brain's already started to shift. It's amazing what it feels like as well, because you don't know why it's happening. It's just all going in the right direction. We talked a little bit about, family, etc. Now, you being a parent of 3 little boys, how's that changed your coaching style? If it's changed your coaching style?
No, it has. It has a lot. It's actually one of my recruiting tactics now, where I'll say, there's a couple college coaches, head coaches out there in the SEC and some Power 4 conferences that don't have any kids or aren't married, right? And I'm always like, hey, do you want your son to really go play for somebody who doesn't have a dad or have a kid or isn't married, like doesn't understand that? It's changed a lot. It's been extremely helpful. I would say having kids has made me a better husband by far. It's helped my work-life balance, come home separation. It's how I treat the individual, right? And understanding, I think it was, hey, I'm always going to coach these guys hard and be very transparent, right? I think that's always been my model when I coach, and still to this day. But I've worked extremely, extremely hard to have relationships with these guys off the field, right? Not just on the baseball side of it. Like, hey, I may be brutally honest and you may not like what I have to say on the field, but off the field, man, I want to know what's going on in your life. How's school? How's your girlfriend? How's your mom and dad? Talk to me. What are you into? Do you watching this game? What movies? You're trying to figure out anything and everything and trying to build these organic relationships. And I think that's something that has, showed up a lot after having children, and just a little bit more sympathetic towards the individual.
Yeah. Digging into the psychology there is impressive. I just one call out on that. So getting to know, there was a mound visit that you did a couple seasons ago, and I'm not going to name the pitcher or anything on there, but as you walk out there, how much are you relying on what you know about that pitcher and where their mental state is when you're having that conversation when things get tough?
You have to, right? And in that moment there, I know that guy's emotional, and I know I have to be the calm one, and I got to be the one that's like, hey, I'm the rock. I'm the one that's not gonna add fuel to the fire, right? And there's also been mound visits like this year where we had a really young team where I'm like, hey, I really don't care what happens. You can give up 2 grand slams, but I'm not gonna come back out here and get you. Like, you're gonna have to figure it out, type thing. And good luck, right? I'll be in the dugout watching. So it goes both ways. And I think the moments define certain things. But I guarantee with that freshman pitcher I had this year, I will never have a mound visit like that again. And like the one you're talking about, I had mound visits like that with him when he was a freshman. And then going to his senior year, it's a little bit more different, respectful. I got to be the calming one, and hey, let him vent, let him say whatever he wants, and just have an adult conversation, as we called it.
Well, there's a little bit of trust there too. Of if he knows you're bought into him as a pitcher, as a human, then your advice on the mound goes a lot further versus the respect or lack of respect where, oh, here he comes again. I got to deal with this. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know who I am. Doesn't know what I'm going through. I think there's a bond there. There's also a lesson on the younger side. You're doing this at the top of the game on the collegiate side. There's an element of pressure that's being applied to little leaguers, travel ball kids on a daily basis, that their performance in this game defines who they are, whether that's going to be a good car ride home or a bad car ride home, whether they need to do 20 push-ups or not. Help us kind of wrap that psychology right now, because you've seen it. You were out on the field with some tough games this summer with the Little League team.
Well,
right.
call it, hold on.
Try and help us.
Call it what it is. Parental pressure cooker. Because that's what it is. It's the ride home. It's the ride to. It's the, when I was playing, you know what? Shut the fuck up. You don't play anymore. That's my response.
Hey, I'm with you on that. You still see it. By the way, I just left this huge tournament in Georgia. It was a 16U tournament with 463 teams at 60 different venues, right? And you still see it. It doesn't stop. It's at the age that we're at now with Little League or soccer, or probably even dance, Craig, like with your daughters. It's the same. It doesn't change, and it's going to keep going all the way through high school. Unfortunately, I think as parents, it's just how are we going to manifest it, right? And I think, Chad, remember, I even told you I'm guilty of it myself when I talked to Las Gatas Little League about my middle son, right? Blake, he went into karate. I didn't know anything about karate, nothing. And by his second, practice, I'm at home with the gloves, like, come on, point right, and before you know it, I don't know anything. And like all of a sudden, a month later, he's like, Dad, I don't want to do karate anymore. I'm like, what? And I'm like, I probably burn him out, right? I was too forceful. And I know how hard baseball is. So it's a little bit easier for me to watch baseball. And I look at it differently than a lot of parents do, and probably a lot of people do. And there's little things in games that, I really want to coach them on that nobody else sees. And there's the most, relevant, or most obvious thing that everybody wants to coach them on. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's not going to affect who they are or what they do. And so that pressure cooker, I like that. I like that term, Craig. I don't know how you stop it, because I think it's inevitable. And I think if you have good coaches that are always just trying to be, I think, open and transparent with the parents and with the players, that's the only way that you're going to continue to build these things. I mean, I pulled a kid in All-Stars. He made this really, really bonehead move. And, I didn't send him back out to defense afterwards. And I set him on the bench. And I told him, and he, of course, about to be in tears. He thinks he's in trouble. And I sat down with him on the bench for the entire inning, telling him, man, dude, you're not in trouble. I just want to use this moment because this is a coachable moment. I'm going to teach you the game. And we sat down and broke down that play 12 different ways on why you don't do it that way, or why you would do it based on situation, score, inning, etc. It had nothing to do with them, right? And like in my mind, I'm like, the parents probably think I'm a huge ass for benching their son because he made a bonehead mistake. I'm not mad about it. He's 10 years old. Yeah. I'm like, coachable moment, teachable moment. And I think those parts get lost with parents.
Yeah, they don't see the long game. That's the biggest thing I've taken out of it is, and a lot of parents that have played as well, we only have a short-term memory. Like I remember when I was playing at 18, 19, whatever age, I don't remember 7 and 8 naturally. So when you're coaching that younger age group, those 10s, 11s, we think they can do more than they actually can do. But then when you're in coaching mode, you're like, dude, okay, you hit it, great. You're going to be able to do that for the rest of your life. But everything else pre that is what I'm looking at. The actual execution. I say this all the time when I'm coaching. I'm like, I can teach you that stuff. I can't teach you attitude. I can't teach you commitment. I can't teach you work ethic. I can't teach you, teachable moments. Like that's the stuff I'm looking for. I'm not looking at the technique at 8, because you're going to be able to practice that for the next 10 years to get to that next level. And I think that's where a lot of people, to your point, the transparency though, something you put up is massive, because you now go into that group of parents saying, hey, your kid screwed up. That's fine. We sat there and we discussed for 10 minutes of all the different alternatives that could have happened because of that. That's what I was coaching. That's my job. I'm a coach. I coach. The outcome will be the outcome. I'm not on the field. I don't play. I don't throw. I don't hit. I can't change the outcome, but I can change how this kid's being taught. And that's my job. So I think that's massive for the parents to hear that you have a question, go speak to the coach. Or the coach should be coming up to you, explaining what we discussed in a one-on-one or a group message, whatever. I think that's completely lost in some people. And I'm as bad at it as well. Same with dance, right? I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, we got to do the leg hold, or oh, we got to. I'm like, what the. To refer to my own comment, you fucking go and do it, Dad, because I definitely can't do it. So
I would
you're
love
totally
to
right.
see that. That is a
I would
Instagram
say that.
special. You do Scarlett solo or Chloe solo. I will put that on Instagram. We'll have 1 billion followers.
Oh, dude,
I
there's
got a
not
funny
a.
story, Chad. You'll appreciate this. And this is my first time ever coaching youth sports, right? And I took advantage of it. We had a crappy season, so we were out, and I got asked to coach this all-star team with my son, and I was like never coached him in anything, and it was way more stressful than ever. But I think a lot of parents are like, hey, he coaches college, you can be able to do this, etc. And I had so much fun doing it, and I had more fun at practice than the games. The practices to me were freaking awesome. I could have practiced for 4 hours with these kids, and they would have too. But there's just one moment with a kid that I was trying to help him hit, and we're doing some things. I'm throwing batting practice, and I told him to do this because he was making, and he finally made contact. Right, he hit a couple balls forward, and he's just kind of rolling his eyes because he doesn't want to do what I'm telling him to do. And so I go down home plate, and I said, "Hey, listen, bud." I go, "You swung and missed more than anybody else on this team, and you finally put a couple balls forward." I go, "We should be celebrating, not rolling our eyes." And he looks at me and he walks away, and he goes to the other coach and he goes, "Don't you think you could have said it in a nicer way?" He's dying laughing. I was like, all right, yeah. I mean, I thought that was nice, but my college players would think I was very nice. They'd think something was wrong with me. That was a pretty good little league moment for me. One I will never forget.
The perception of how people hear messages, and it's just like with any one of our kids. You say the eye rolling comment. Same type of thing with Theo, and you see it work in the cage, and he's like, "Holy shit, Dad might know what he's talking about." But there's no desire to validate what I've told him. He will give credit to another coach. He'll give credit to anybody, and that's just a fun game we get to play.
These kids.
That's awesome.
These kids.
I'm the opposite with mine. I'm trying to make sure Trey is a very literal person, and Blake is very proud of me. I'm probably Blake loves me. He's my middle. And they're very proud of what I do. And so, I think sometimes I have to let them know, I'm like, hey, I'm not the only person that knows baseball in this world, or I'm not the only person that's ever going to coach you. You need to listen to other coaches. I mean, when it comes to basketball and anything else, soccer, they are sponges. But when it comes to baseball, I've had a couple serious conversations with them about listening to other coaches. But to their defense, they know what I do. They've been around the field. They see everything that I do. It's hard for them to not understand, like, why would you tell him to do that? My dad's never said that to me. Right. And so, being 10 and 7, you got to give them a little bit of grace. But, as a parent, I want them to respect their coaches at all times, wherever they have, and understand the knowledge of it. And there's not just one voice. They're going to get 1,000 voices now to filter out what you want.
And that extends way beyond sports. I mean, coachability in the professional setting, as a manager, as a boss going in and giving instruction, if somebody is able to understand the instruction, the intent behind the instruction, and to work with you, that's a very valuable employee, friend. When you have that resistance and say, "Oh, I know how to do it. It's my way or the highway," it creates that friction and does the kid a disservice as they go out, into college, into the professional setting.
Yeah, that's all of it. I think that we see that a lot, right? Is if you've played at a certain level, people know going into the work world that, hey, you absorb, you listen, you take note, but you also, and I love this in my players as well, is push back. You think I'm wrong? Push back. Q&A me, right? It keeps me on my toes, and maybe I'm seeing something that you guys, you guys see it and I don't. So let's go down that road. So I think it really does transition into that. And as we all know, we've all worked for asshole managers, and you realize, like, oh, you've never done anything. Like, if you have to lead with an iron fist, I've got zero interest in working for you.
This is
flexibility goes both ways.
No, without, and something that Coach Esker at Stanford, something that he always, and I would say probably when we all were going up and playing, our coach was like, hey, run through the wall. You're like, done. Hey, do 10,000 sit-ups. You're like, okay. You're not knowing why, right? Now the players ask why, which is good. They should. Um, but something that my coach Esker always tells us as coaches is we got to learn the language they speak, right? He goes, and he goes, even with my son, right? He goes, he has a son that's in college, and he goes, I'm constantly trying to figure out his language when we're working on hitting. He goes, I'm looking up, this language on TikTok of hitters. So like, okay, they don't understand. So I can say something. I know what, my old school way of coaching makes sense to my son. And at first, I remember when I first started working for Coach Esker, I was like, really? No, it's my way. Like they're going to learn my language, right? But you want to get the most out of these guys, you got to learn their language, and that's something that I really try and do. And for I think if you want to be a good coach, like nobody cares what you've done. Back in the day, they used to care. Oh, he played pro ball, or he played professional soccer, or he played Division I, or he played college sports. So listen to him. No, the kids nowadays don't care where they get the information from. They just want information, and you got to learn how to speak it to them. And if you can do that, then you're going to get the most out of them.
Have you figured out this new language though? This skibbity riz Ohio toilet, whatever the hell's going on? Because I'm lost.
I go in the locker room from time to time to kind of catch up on some of it. It's pretty interesting. Let's just say there's some good laughs because I have no idea what they're saying. But yeah, they riz is one of the words that gets thrown around quite a bit in the locker room.
Yeah. Towards you or not towards you?
No,
okay,
not towards me. Just they're telling a story about they're rizzing up some girl, rizzing on some girl. I don't know what that means, but it's like it's like a flirtatious, like you're flirting with them.
Yeah. All right. Before we get us all in trouble and show that we're approaching or currently 40, let's move on a little bit. I do want to get into on the family side of it, Thomas. You're at a D1 program. You need to recruit nationally. I think you're on the East Coast, a bit going through and trying to compete with the bigger programs. We'll leave NIL for a separate conversation. How are you finding the balancing act between being present at work, doing the right job, everything that comes into building a big program, and getting it home as much as possible, being around the three boys, being around Jenna to make sure that you're present for the kids?
Yeah, it's the most. I'm still battling that. I think I will continue to battle that for the rest of my coaching career. I was in Atlanta, Georgia for a few days, and even while I'm out there, I'm missing my boys, and my wife, and they're taking trips and stuff on their own. And I give my wife so much credit for being an independent woman and an independent mom to just, she always says, hey, life doesn't stop when you're gone. So, it's very difficult. Something that, my dad is one of my biggest influences and mentors in life. And, I remember when I had my second child, I remember panicking a little bit, like, okay, how are we going to do this? We're up at Cal Berkeley, two kids. I'm working. I'm trying to be the recruiting coordinator. I'm getting cold. And I would say that it's probably the hardest years of our marriage. Not saying that we're in a divorce. It was just hard. It was just a very hard part of our lives. And I remember talking to my dad about it. And I was like, Dad, you didn't miss a single thing. Like you were at every basketball game, every soccer game. You were at every single thing of mine. And I said, I look back and I'm like, I would love to do that for my kids. But my profession doesn't allow me to do that. And I was having anxiety about that because my kids quite weren't playing stuff yet, but I just realized it was not going to happen. And I remember him telling me, he's like, okay, so, he goes, your grandfather, I said, yeah. He goes, my dad. I said, yeah, Grandpa Eager. I said, what do you got? He goes, like, well, he's he had 9 kids. I said, yeah, Dad, you're the oldest of 9. And he goes, and he was an orthopedic surgeon and he built his own practice in their town. I said, yeah. And he goes, do you think he was at all my sporting events? Do you think he was at all 9 of our sporting events and dance recitals and all the stuff we did? He goes, no. He goes, but he made the ones he could. Right. And he goes, that's what I always remember is he wasn't going golfing and missing a game. He's coming in scrubs, watching me pitch or, play, hoops for 2 quarters and then leaving to go do surgery. Right. He goes, but I remember those 2 quarters he was at. And I was like, here's this, 60-year-old man telling me he remembers these things. And I'm like, okay, I can do this then. Like if that's something, I look at my dad and, just different paths. I was like, okay, I can do this. And I realized too, that if you're doing something you love, which I do, and your wife supports you in that, you're going to be a better husband and a better father than coming home doing something you hate. And Jen always say that. And I said, when life is getting tough, it's like, do you want me to quit my job and go do something else? She goes, no, because you'd be miserable coming home every day. I don't want that. She goes, you're actually happy when you come home. It's just you work a lot and weird hours and phone calls. And so I've just had to really navigate those times. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that stuff can wait for tomorrow when earlier in my career, it had to be now. If someone called, I had to get an answer, I had to figure it out now, which is affecting my work life. And now it's like, you know what? That phone call can wait for tomorrow. That email can wait for tomorrow morning. I can get up at 4 a.m. and knock out 2 hours of work before the kids get up. And then when they're up, I'm dad cooking breakfast. It's just figuring out those little things. And I'm still working on it. Jim would say I'm still working on it, but I'm way better than when I was, 10 years ago. I promise you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that any of us are going to perfect that, but being present when we can and wanting to be present. I think that's the biggest shift of, I want to be there. Timing might not work out. There will be things that pop up, but the intent is to always be present and create those moments to remember, with the kids. And as we continue to create those moments and continue to show up, we just reinforce what we're really there for. It's not about the wins and losses. It's just taking that pressure off and being a kid.
I think the biggest thing, I don't know what the answer is, how to not have pressure for little kids. I don't. I wish I knew it. You know what I mean? Like, how do we not? And it's way worse than it ever was because of the social media aspect and everything these guys have and what they have at their fingertips. And just even on TV and YouTube, like, it's just the pressure part of it. I don't know how these kids deal with it because, hey, if I had a bad start or got tore up by Long Beach State, nobody knew, right? And nobody knew. Now everybody knows
Everybody's living their life online. Yeah, that's true. And the commentary of, these are young men. That's the part that for me growing up, when I saw a college game or professional game going on, like those guys are older, they're mature, they're adults. Now going through hitting 40 years old, like that's a 20-year-old who just gave up a home run to cost his team the series. You got some guys booing them. That one of the Stanford games we're at, we got booing. Like,
yeah.
What are we doing?
And those guys get on their DMs like, you just cost me $200. I didn't hit my parlay because of you. Oh, they get crushed. Like, no, like especially in the World Series, the last 3 years we're in the World Series. Like when we've lost, it's like we just get crushed. Or the pitcher, or if the guy makes an error, that guy, you go on his social media and it's just like all the way down. It's just all negative. And I'm like, me personally, like I would cancel it. Like I wouldn't, and I've told our guys to just, you guys at certain points, like you need to shut down the social media part because it's not healthy. But I don't, that's just such a hard subject that I wish there was an answer on how to relieve the stress of being perfect or being the best at such a young age because, these kids don't realize that, this doesn't define who they are. I got cut from my travel ball team in 6th grade. And I'm the only one on that whole team the next year that's ever played professional baseball or got a college scholarship. So it's like, I look at it so much differently than I think a lot of other people.
But you've already kind of mentioned this of as soon as you took the pressure off yourself, you played your best ball.
Best ever. Yeah.
Watching All-Stars over the summer, it gave me this awful feeling in my stomach where a kid would strike out at the plate and immediately would look at his dad.
Yeah.
He'd make an error in the field and immediately look at his dad. I'm like, I cannot imagine the pressure or the car ride home that you have to go through if you're doing that inside the game versus some of these kids that are a little more aloof. For me, it's Manny Ramirez. Manny Ramirez, one of the best baseball players ever. I think he just loved playing a baseball game and Manny's going to be Manny. And that made him as great as he is. He wasn't analyzing everything.
100%. And Trey even yells at me, but not yells at me, but he never yells at me. But that's my biggest fear with him. Is like during the All-Star, like he'll make an error and he looks in the dugout like, I'm like, I don't care. Like but I think he's always, we work baseball so much and we spend so much time like, hey man, were you engaged? Yes. Did you give your best effort? Yes. Were you scared? No regrets. Have no regrets. Like as soon as you can learn to have no regrets, like now, hey, if you tell me that you weren't ready and you made an error, well, that's your fault. Figure it out. Now you know.
That's the accountability. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer for that. I feel like it's one of those things that if we could write a book on it, we could make a ton of money. Like if we had the answer.
Well, if we had the answer, and we're going to keep trying unpacking that through this podcast of going through and just helping everybody frame it through somebody else's eyes. I think for me going through, it's about empathy. When I took over on this Los Gatos Little League side, I had no idea what it took to run a league. Now you have a lot of respect of everything that's going behind the scenes. I have no idea what it takes to be a Stanford pitching coach. But I'm going to trust and be there for you when you say, oh man, this is going right, this is going wrong. And I think bringing that empathy then provides a little bit of relief that nobody is going to be perfect. Stop expecting
Right.
perfection because you're not going to get it, but meet people where they are.
Right. No, Chad, I think it's perfect. Empathy. Right. No, I'm on board with that because that's watching. I don't think I, now, hey, Craig made it or an earlier comment like, hey, we think we know what it was like when we were 10 years old. Right. But we don't, we forget. I just don't remember seeing so many 10-year-olds cry on a baseball field. Like, I just don't remember that. And I like to think we didn't cry that much. I want to pray that we didn't, but I'm hoping we did because in my brain, I'm like, how do these guys cry so much? Like from every little thing, like, how does that happen? And that maybe it's a pressure cooker, like Craig mentioned.
I think it is. I think it is the pressure that if I don't do well, I am not a good human. I'm not a good kid. My parents expect this of me. There's a bit of that. I do remember the feeling of letting people down when I'm 12 or 13 years old, when you strike out and then you're just, you want to just let it all go. And maybe we had a different trick, or we were told, boys don't cry, and we had to lock it up, and which is causing the issues that we have right now, I'm sure. But you're right. There is a lot of emotion on the field. And as coaches, we're all having a difficult time trying to have the tool set. So at the Little League, Positive Coaching Alliance has been one of the best things that we've ever done. We have a parent version and a coach's version at the beginning of the season to reframe. Nobody is going to remember the 3-2 count in the bottom of the sixth on March 15th in 2024. Nobody. Right. But the feeling that you have of, I want to go back out and play Little League baseball next year. I want to go to the next at bat. That's what we're trying to foster. So get rid of all of the perfection, right? Let Thomas do that when they get to college. Take the raw tools and turn them into a major leaguer. But that's not what we're here for in Little League or youth sports, youth soccer.
Well, there's a few things you guys just mentioned. Is we totally miss out, and I truly believe this. We just played when we were kids. There was no rec, comp, whatever terminology it is. We just played, generally with your friends. There was no moving teams. Number one, your parents weren't going to drive you 20 minutes the other way or 30 minutes the other way. It was the local team, and you all respected and represented that local team. So there's that part of it. And then I think the other thing is that we're totally missing on the Positive Coaching Alliance side of it, not missing it that way. Dude, the amount of parents that think they can coach is an issue, right? They step up because they're trying to be good human beings. I totally get that. But they actually shouldn't coach. Some of the best coaches, right? The parents coaches I've seen are the ones who actually know nothing, right? They just follow the plan, go out there, support. They don't know if it's 1-0, 2-0. They're just doing their best. There's no screaming, shouting. And that's, for me anyway, when the parents start screaming, shouting, I'm like, guys, we're 7. No one made professional soccer at 7 years old or even 8 years old. Nobody won the World Cup at 10 years old. So can we just take this down? Because there's no need. But again, we still miss the minute they get in the car, we have no control over what the parents are saying. And I think social media kicks into this as well. This is a lot longer conversation, but the minute money came into the game at the level that it's coming in at, I mean, you're seeing it now in college, right? What's the NIA or whatever the
NIL, yeah.
I'm like, Jesus, there's these kids getting $16 million boot deals at, whatever years old. And I'm like, yeah, the parents and, they see their kid has talent. They think they're helping their kid with that talent by pushing them because there's this huge paycheck at the end of it. Actually, you're making it worse, but you don't realize that because you want the kid to better their life, which I totally get. But I think the money side of it is just chaotic right now. I mean, how do you deal with that?
To go along with that, I mean, and not take too much time on it, but like the transfer portal. I mean, Chad, I don't know if you know much about the transfer portal now. I mean, it was nothing like when we played, right? It was like get a fit out a year, whatever, all these things, right? But now, like Craig, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in college and all sports, if you don't like where you're at, you can transfer, no harm, no foul. as long as you can get into the other school, right? And play right away the next year. And you can do it it used to be one time. Now it's as many times as you want. You can play for four different colleges in 4 years if you'd like. And so, I look at that a couple different ways. And I look at my journey, like I explained earlier about Cal Poly redshirt, 15 innings, 126 innings, drafted. Well, what if I would have transferred after my freshman year? Like, what would have happened? Right? What if I would have transferred after my sophomore year? What would have happened? I'm not sure. Right. And I like to think that sticking it out made me the person I am today and where I'm at today. But then I also look at it too. Like if my son's out of college and he hasn't played for 2 years and his dream is to play, like it's nothing else but to play. And I still think college sports are the best thing in the entire world as far as meeting your friends and everything else. And it's like, hey, and you're not at a place where maybe the degree it doesn't matter, I guess, quote unquote. Do you talk your son to transfer? I don't know. Like I'm that's where I'm scared in my situation with three boys, and after coaching them, it's like all they want to do is play. Now, hey, I will say this, and I'll be firm. If my son goes to Stanford, he is not transferring. I don't care if he plays an inning. He will stay. He will
Your
stay.
grandfather was an orthopedic surgeon. You are getting a doctorate. You are staying in school.
You're staying. I don't care. I mean, there's a few schools like that. They're staying, and they can go play a graduate year somewhere. I don't care. But there's a lot of other schools. Like, I mean, I get it. And so I don't know. It's a weird dynamic where what's the right answer? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is.
So just so as I'm not baseball knowledgeable really, but can you go straight from high school into pros? You don't have to go through the college. Okay, cool. So are we going to start seeing? Are we going to start seeing more and more of that? Do you think with this kind of money coming into college / the portal, are people going to skip that now if they're good enough and go? I guess it's a small number that are good enough at that young age to go all the way into the pros.
I think the high school thing is going to stay the same. I think the guys who get signed are going to be the same. I think what you're going to see, though, is I think you're going to see more guys in college stay because they're going to get X if they play one more year of college as opposed to signing for getting this, right, which is more money. So
is it big money as well, like hundreds of thousands? Like what's?
Yeah.
Wow. So it's a career inside of college then, basically. It's a full-time. I mean, I know college athletes are a full-time job anyway, but now you're actually getting paid at that full-time employee rate.
Yes, and then some. Yeah.
How does that affect the locker room, Thomas? You have one guy, sitting next to you has an NIL deal for $100,000, and the guy playing shortstop has nothing.
Yeah. We don't have that issue currently, so I wouldn't say that would be. But that's what, Chad. That's something that we talk about as coaches all the time. Like, how does that happen? What do you do? And I think you see that across the board with how many people go in the transfer portal every year, and you see guys leave every year. It's really hard to keep that locker room. It's not a college locker room anymore. It becomes a professional locker room, right? Where that guy has that $5 million contract, and this guy has the $550,000 contract, right? And is there animosity? Not really. You got to play for your contracts and go that route, but. I also think that if the kid has one good year, he expects to get paid the following year.
Let's just look that back a second for the social media, because as we're talking about that, on one hand, right, shut it down, the comments, the trolls, all that stuff, distracting, detrimental to mental health. On the other side, is there an encouragement from the program, from the university, from their potential agents to have a social media presence to up their value so that they can get a better NIL deal? And it's a little bit of a vicious cycle.
So I've been on a couple of Zooms with different agencies with their NIL departments to kind of get a better understanding of this. They would say, yes, booster your NIL deal or your social media as much as you can, right? Because it makes it easier for them to find potential whatever. Ironically enough, that's not really the thing in male sports all that much, right? They always say, like, then one of the girls was making a comment to me from one of the agencies. She goes, it's the 20th rounder that has, 200,000 followers that I can get him more money than the first rounder who has 200 followers because he's no activity. But the first rounder wants more money on deals because he's the first rounder, right? And it's that double-edged sword that people are trying to figure out. Right now, the NIL deals that these people are making are solely just basically coming off of boosters for the most part. and saying, hey, this, hey, we're going to bring this pitcher in because we expect him to pitch on Friday nights. Here's X, right?
How does that change your coaching though? If the money's saying you need to play this guy on Friday because we're paying his salary.
Well, there's also in these things a lot of fine line in those contracts, right? So when they sign those NIL contracts, it's not, you're never paid all at once, right?
Yeah.
So
So it's
let's
the
say,
same as a pro
Craig,
contract.
let's say Chad's coming in to play shortstop for us, and hey, man, Chad, we're going to give you a full ride scholarship plus $100,000. Well, the day he sets foot on campus, he might get 10,000.
I've still got a year of eligibility left, just to be clear. I only played 3 years. I had a broken ankle my freshman year. I couldn't play. So if you need some,
There you go. And so, I mean, and then, all of a sudden at, semester, he gets another 20,000. And then all of a sudden, maybe there's some incentives in there. Did he hit this? So it could be up to 100,000, right? It's just, they're protected. They protect themselves in it. But because I think early on, there were some guys that would get paid up front and then leave again. Like, there's just, thanks for the money and whatever. So there's a little bit more protection on it, but it's a crazy world. I would say there's probably some changes in the next year or two in college sports across the board that I'm going to be in favor of, which hopefully will take down this NIL deal a little bit more and kind of put everything under an umbrella that's a little bit more easier for a lot of schools to deal with.
Well, it's going to be exciting to watch you and the Stanford baseball program. No more Pac-12, so moving into a new conference this next season, some new rivalries, and some cross-country travel. So you're going to be a little bit even more in that struggle bubble as you go through, but it sounds like you have a great foundation, a great support system at home. We've really enjoyed this conversation, Thomas. Again, thank you for offering to come on with us, and you can come back at any time. We'll extend that invitation.
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. You guys are awesome, Craig, Chad. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.
Everybody listening, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, do whatever you need to do to get more Struggle Bubble content. We're going to keep lining up more and more guests throughout the next few weeks. But with that, we'll see you all next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.
you.